Hello and welcome to the Run Testers. My name is Nick and this is our first look at the Brooks Glycerin Max. The Glycerin Max is an all-new shoe from Brooks that comes in to sit in the Glycerin range as the Max version of the shoe. So that tends to mean a slightly higher stack height, and it certainly means that in the case with this shoe, but also that you have more of a low drop, more rockered shoe compared to the standard version. So if you look at the Brooks Ghost Max compared to the Brooks Ghost, it's more rockered and lower drop, and that's the same with the Glycerin Max versus the standard Glycerin. It's also more expensive. It's a very expensive shoe. It's £180 in the UK or $200 in the US. It weighs in at 319 grams or 11.2 ounces in my UK size 9, and you've got a 6mm drop from heel to toe. Stack height for the midsole only is 35mm at the heel and 29 at the forefoot. I think for the whole stack on the shoe, you're looking at 45mm at the heel, 39 at the forefoot. So that's a bit of a departure from what we've seen from Brooks in the recent past. Well, they haven't tended to super max the stack heights on their shoes compared to other brands, but they've obviously gone for it with the Brooks Glycerin Max. The shoe is not available just yet. It's going to be available on October the 1st in limited quantities, is what we've been told. So along with being the biggest shoe we've ever seen from Brooks, it's also got an all-new foam in the midsole of the Glycerin Max. It's the DNA tuned material, which is nitrogen infused like we had with the DNA Loft V3 foam on shoes like the Glycerin 21 or Ghost 16, but Brooks has been able to fiddle with the densities with the midsole, across the midsole. Within the same midsole, you have a softer feeling at the heel where you have larger cells used according to Brooks, which means you get a slightly more compliant and soft foam underfoot, so that comfortable feeling when you're landing at the heel there. And then you have a slightly denser feeling with smaller cells used at the forefoot to give you a more responsive feel and a more poppy toe off from the shoe. So it differs a bit from the dual density effect we've had with other shoes where we've had two different layers of foam. We've got the same foam here, just tuned differently at the heel and the forefoot. You also have Brooks's glide roll rocker, which you also find on shoes like the Hyperion Max and the Ghost Max. You've got a well padded and cushioned upper on the top here. We've got quite a lot of padding on the tongue and plenty around the heel as well, with a significant internal heel counter. It does look to me like the heel is a little bit different though to shoes like the Glycerin or Ghost 16, where you've got this slightly more tapered heel collar, and the way the padding's set up reminds me a bit more of Hoka shoes actually than some of the other Brooks models we've been testing this year. Then you have a rubber outsole. There's not full coverage on the shoe here. They obviously tried to reduce weight a little bit here, but it is a thick layer of rubber, and you've got good coverage on the forefoot and the heel there.
So when it comes to fit, I ran in my regular running shoe size in Brooks, which is UK 8.5. And overall, I found the fit really roomy. There's plenty of room across the toes, length and across the uppers. This has got a really spacious toe box. It's nice and airy and flexible, loads of wiggle room, super comfortable, a bit like the Hyperion Max 2. No pinching on the toe knuckles, but there is just a right amount of hold there. As you go back up, one thing I did notice, there's a little bit of bulging with the tongues. I find it a little bit hard to get the lace to sit and hold really securely across the top of the foot there. But moving back into the shoes, the heel collars, they are quite narrow. They look quite narrow when you first see the shoe, but actually there's quite a lot of room in the heels. They weren't quite as secure and snug as maybe I would like, but the tongue's nicely padded, so you've got all that kind of plushness that you'll get from the fit of a sort of super cushioned shoe. And yeah, as you'd kind of expect. Otherwise, I just found this to be a really nice, roomy fit, and I would recommend going true to size in these shoes.
The fit of the Glycerin Max for me was very good for me in my normal running shoe size. I've got a UK 9 here, that's a US 10 for Brooks. That's the size I use kind of across all their cushion shoes, and it always fits me really well. So same fit as shoes like the Ghost 16, the Glycerin 21, the Ghost Max 2. So it's certainly all good for length around the toe box. I have preferred the heel design on the Glycerin Max though to the other Brooks shoes I've been testing this year. I sometimes basically get Achilles irritation. I've got a bit of Achilles tendonitis that flares up with very stiff heel counters sometimes, and the Ghost 16 did it to me quite badly. I did it a little bit with some of the other shoes, but not so badly. But actually with the Glycerin Max, the way it's been set up here feels to work a bit better for me at the moment. I don't really know exactly how, but it just feels like there's a bit more space around the Achilles, and it's not quite so rigid compared to some other shoes, but you certainly are still getting a lot of padding and support at the back of the shoe. So yeah, overall I will stick to your normal running shoe size with the Glycerin Max. So I've done 2 runs in the Glycerin Max so far, kind of an easy 40 minutes and an easy 60 minutes this morning. So pretty much all done at a fairly relaxed pace, the occasional pickup here and there just to feel the shoe at faster paces, but mostly just cruising around my normal daily training, the kind of thing the shoe will be used for. And it's designed to bring kind of an elevated feeling to that daily training compared to Brooks' other shoes. And the ride is certainly very nice. Like the midsole feels really good. It's very soft at the back for sure. It's softer than the other Brooks shoes in the range, I would say. Things like the Glycerin, you've certainly got a bit more of a feeling of sinking into that foam. And then as you roll through, you get quite a nice transition. It's pretty smooth, it's pretty fast. You get onto the forefoot and you get a little bit of pop there. And the way Brooks say they set up the midsole does appeal to me. Someone who doesn't tend to always get on with very soft shoes. So if I get just a completely soft midsole foam, sometimes I feel like I'm wading through it a bit. I don't get a very smooth transition. I don't really get the feeling I like underfoot. And with Brooks's foams in general, they've always got quite a nice consistent feeling, a nice resilient feeling, so you can flow through your foot strike quite well, I find, and they feel good at the end of long runs and that kind of thing. But with the Glycerin Max, you also get that kind of softness at the back. If you're a heel striker like myself, you are landing in a nice wedge of foam there. It is comfortable, it is soft, and then you move through onto that slightly more dense forefoot, I guess, and get that little bit of extra pop, so you're not getting slowed down by the softness in the foam. The rocker helps with that. It's quite smooth, quite flowing, and all in all, the ride is very nice. Like, the shoe feels lighter than it is, because it's not particularly, well, it's pretty standard weight for a big cushion shoe like this in my size, but it feels a bit lighter than that, actually, I'd say. And it does tick over nicely, thanks to the rocker in the shoe, which I've got on with as well in the shoes like the Ghost Max 2 and the previous version of the Ghost Max, the first version of that shoe. I think Brooks's glide raw rocker does suit me quite well, and now you've got just a nicer foam underfoot. I think if you're a bit heavier than me, you'll probably get a bit more out of this midsole. Like, I sometimes feel with like a 45mm stack shoe, I don't really feel like I'm sinking in enough necessarily to really engage all of that foam, but it feels nice and soft to me, and I think you'll probably get even more from it if you are a slightly heavy runner or more of a bounding runner who puts a lot of force into shoes. I tend to skitter along with a high cadence and don't necessarily sink right into foam like this, but it did feel nice to me. And like I say, the main thing about a soft shoe is I don't want it to be too soft. I want to be able to roll through nicely, and you do get that feeling with this shoe. As I mentioned, I haven't done a load of fast running in the shoe yet, and it doesn't feel like an area where it's necessarily going to excel. Like, you see a big stack, you see a big price tag, you start to think things like Super Blast and shoes like that, but no, that doesn't really feel like that's what the shoe is going to be. It feels much more like a comfortable shoe for your daily training, long runs, that kind of thing, more in the Skyward X mold from Hoka or the Puma Mag Max shoe, where it's a fairly heavy shoe, it's really comfortable and cushioned, it's got a bit of bounce there. When you run in it fast, you do get a nice bit of bounce from this midsole, but it doesn't feel like a shoe I'd pick out for speed training, and it feels more like a big mileage shoe as opposed to something like the Super Blast or the New Balance Ballast, which have a bit more versatility in the kind of high price max stack shoe area. So it feels very much like a more premium Ghost Max 2, which I guess is what you expect with the Glycerin being the more premium Ghost. You've now got the Glycerin Max as the step up from the Ghost Max 2, but I'd say the step up you get here is a bit bigger than you have with the Ghost 16 to the Glycerin 21, because you've got this new foam in the Glycerin Max, which does feel nicer than the material in the Ghost Max 2, I think.
So I've just finished my first run in the Brooks Glycerin Max. I did 4.5 miles or so. Most of it nice and easy, kind of recovery pace, 9-minute miles. I did step it up a little bit for a few segments and went to kind of 7-minute miles, so not marathon pace, but not far off it, but not for a lot because I'm on fairly tired legs. And overall, my initial instant kind of reaction to these shoes, I love the upper fit, nice and roomy, like the Hyperion Max 2 actually. There's just really nice airiness and roominess, coverage across the toe box. I feel like I can wiggle my toes, and I think that helps make this shoe feel lighter than maybe it is on the scales on the run. You kind of feel like they're light on the feet. I clip along really happily, and then that massive stack underfoot isn't the most stable. I did some on roads, some on kind of light off-road river paths where it's a bit stony and can be a bit wobbly, and you can definitely feel that sort of midsole kind of tilting from time to time. They run much better on the road, and they are much better when I'm up on my mid to forefoot rather than rocking back further where they do feel controlled. So to me, in some ways, these shoes feel like a more balanced, more controlled version of the Hoka Skyward X, where you've got that big stack, you've got a big kind of bouncy foam that's soft, it's very sinky. It does return back and give you some energy, but it feels more controlled. The Skyward X sort of fired me around the place. I think with these shoes, I feel like I'm a little bit more under control. Other things I've noted here, the footbed is super soft, super squishy. When I'm standing here and sort of moving my feet, it kind of cradles the foot, but there's a lot of movement in it. I think that outsole, which kind of has those grooves, also adds to the overall kind of flex feeling of the shoe. Overall, I really enjoyed that actually. What I needed today, I'm feeling tired legs, but I didn't want to run really slow for the whole of it, or feel like I was heavy and sort of super cushioned and weighed down, and there's a little bit of bounce in them, a little bit of energy.
So Glycerin Max, definitely an enjoyable shoe to run in so far. I'm looking forward to doing a long run in the shoe and also using it for some slightly faster work as well. It does feel like a shoe that elevates the classic Brooks experience rather than being something completely new. Like, you've got the kind of key Brooks notes here. It's a pretty stable shoe despite the high stack. You've got a quite consistent, resilient foam that isn't overly soft, even at the heel. It's not going to feel wobbly or unstable or bottom out at all. You've got that consistent feeling. And then it adds in these elements from the Max line with the rocker, the lower drop, and it just ticks over really nicely. It's going to be very comfortable, supportive. That's a shoe I think will work well for newer runners and then for experienced runners as a kind of mileage daily trainer. But we'll obviously put all that to the test a bit more before our full review. This is just our first impressions on the shoe. But even at this stage, it does feel very pricey as a £180 shoe or a $200 shoe in particular. Like when you get into that ballpark, you start to see shoes that are really versatile, crazy all-rounders that do loads and loads of stuff. There are certainly more of these cushion daily trainers creeping into that bracket now that are just like, it's a shoe that makes everyday miles feel nice. And no, that's a great thing. Like if you're doing a lot of everyday miles, and a shoe like the Hoka Skyward X or this shoe will elevate that experience. But at the same time, you can get that experience for cheaper shoes within the Brooks range for sure. They've got loads of really good cushioned, comfortable daily trainers. And it's whether you want to make that step up in price and look at the Glycerin Max is a tricky one to call, but it's one we'll make a bit more of a call on in our full review. Obviously, when we've had more of a chance to test the shoe. I've only done like 25k in it so far. I don't want to say anything too definitive, but it's been an enjoyable 25k. I can say that at least. And it's always interesting to see Brooks introduce kind of very new things into their lineup because they do tend to play it fairly safe with their cushioned shoes because they are so popular. So it's nice to see something a bit more out there.
So then, quick first impression summary of the Brooks Glycerin Max. That DNA tuned foam I think is working. It brings energy to the shoe, cushioned comfort, protection. There's a softness there which isn't overly soft. I think particularly with the way I run mid to forefoot, I felt that engage at the right time, and sort of with the rocker it's kind of moving me through nicely. It felt smooth. I thought the transitions were good. When I dropped back a little bit on my heels, you've got a lot of protection in that heel. I did find a little bit of wobble, but overall, if this shoe is designed to bring a bit of life and a bit of fun and a bit of sort of cushion and protection to your easy runs, so far from what I found out there, it kind of fits the bill. Today's exactly the day that I needed a shoe for that. I ran 11 miles yesterday, spent 2.5 hours on feet, so everything was a bit tired. I felt a bit laboured. I wanted something that was going to look after me, but not drag me down. And I think that's exactly what these Glycerin Max shoes have done today. So far, very early in the testing, it's one run, but I think there's a lot of positives to take from the shoe so far. And yeah, not too many negatives. So yeah, we will do more testing. We'll bring you a review. Make sure you subscribe to find out when that lands. But yeah, from me, that first run, yeah, I really like what I've seen so far.
So that's our first look at the Brooks Glycerin Max. Let us know what you think in the comments below. Please do like and subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.